Lingue originali.
Lingue originali. 3 appuntamenti ogni settimana. Il venerdì, il sabato e la domenica alle 22 per conoscere gli autori che hanno firmato grandi opere o anche opere meno conosciute della letteratura inglese, tedesca e francese in compagnia di Marco Piovaz, Nadia Meroni e Barbara Marchand. Questo è l'appuntamento dedicato alla lingua inglese. Ben trovati da Dario Albertini. Continuiamo a leggere The Uncommon Reader, la sovrana lettrice, l'edizione italiana pubblicata in Italia da Adelphi. Ricordo all'inizio di ogni episodio dove ci muoviamo, qual è l'ambientazione. L'ambientazione è in Inghilterra, ovviamente, ma non in un posto particolare, a Buckingham Palace, e ancora una volta a Buckingham Palace in un altro posto poco noto ai più. Non che il resto del palazzo sia così noto, però almeno sappiamo che ha questa bella facciata, il suo cortile, il cambio della guardia, eccetera. Ma il cortile vicino alle cucine non lo conosciamo. Lo stiamo conoscendo grazie ad Alan Bennett, perché la vicenda parte proprio da lì, è intrisa del tipico, caratteristico humor inglese. Un nuovo episodio quindi, e linea e microfono vanno subito a Marco Piovaz.
So in due course, Her Majesty went to Wales and to Scotland and to Lancashire and the West Country in that unremitting round of nationwide perambulation that is the lot of the monarch. The Queen must meet her people, however awkward and tongue-tied such meetings might turn out to be, though it was here that her staff could help. To get round the occasional speechlessness of her subjects when confronted with the sovereign, the equerries would sometimes proffer handy hints as to possible conversations. Her Majesty may well ask you if you have had far to come. Have your answer ready, and then possibly go on to say whether you came by train or by car. She may then ask you where you have left the car and whether the traffic was busier here than in, where did you say you come from? Andover. The Queen, you see, is interested in all aspects of the nation's life, so she will sometimes talk about how difficult it is to park in London these days, which could then take you on to a discussion of any parking problems you might have in Basingstoke. Andover, actually, though Basingstoke's a nightmare too. Quite so, but you get the idea. Small talk. Mundane though these conversations might be, they had the merit of being predictable and above all brief, affording Her Majesty plenty of opportunities to cut the exchange short. The encounters ran smoothly and to a schedule. The Queen seemed interested and her subjects were seldom at a loss. And that perhaps the most eagerly anticipated conversation of their lives had only amounted to a discussion of the coned-off section of the M6 hardly mattered. They had met the Queen and she had spoken to them, and everyone got away on time. So routine had such exchanges become that the equerries now scarcely bothered to invigilate them, hovering on the outskirts of the gathering, always with a helpful, if condescending, smile. So it was only when it became plain that the tongue-tied quotient was increasing and that more and more of her subjects were at a loss when talking to Her Majesty that the staff began to eavesdrop on what was, or was not, being said. It transpired that with no prior notification to her attendants, the Queen had abandoned her long-standing lines of inquiry, length of service, distance travelled, place of origin, and had embarked on a new conversational gambit, namely, what are you reading at the moment? To this, very few of Her Majesty's loyal subjects had a ready answer, though one did try the Bible. Hence the awkward pauses which the Queen tended to fill by saying, "I'm reading," sometimes even fishing in her handbag and giving them a glimpse of the lucky volume. Unsurprisingly, the audiences got longer and more ragged, with a growing number of her loving subjects going away regretting that they had not performed well, and feeling too that the monarch had somehow bawled them a googly. Off-duty, Piers, Tristram, Giles and Elspeth, all the Queen's devoted servants, compare notes. What are you reading? I mean, what sort of question is that? Most people, poor dears, aren't reading anything. Except if they say that, Madame roots in her handbag, fetches out some volumes she's just finished, and makes them a present of it, which they promptly sell on eBay. Quite. And have you been on a royal visit recently? One of the ladies-in-waiting chips in. Because the world has got round. Whereas once upon a time the dear people would fetch along the odd daffodil or a bunch of mouldy old primroses, which Her Majesty then passed back to us, bringing up the rear, nowadays they fetch along books they're reading, or, wait for it, even writing. And if you're unlucky enough to be in attendance, you practically need a trolley. If I'd wanted to cart books around, I'd have got a job in Hatchards. I'm afraid Her Majesty is getting to be what is known as a handful. Still, the equerries accommodated, and disgruntled though they were at having to vary their routine in the light of the Queen's new predilection, her attendants reluctantly changed tack, and in their presentation warm-up now suggested that while Her Majesty might, as of old, still inquire as to how far the presentee had come and by what means, these days she was more likely to ask what the person was currently reading. At this, most people looked blank and sometimes panic-stricken. But nothing daunted, the equerries came up with a list of suggestions. Though this meant that the Queen came away with a disproportionate notion of the popularity of Andy McNab and the near-universal affection for Joanna Trollope, no matter, at least embarrassment had been avoided. And once the answers had been supplied, the audiences were back on track and finished on the dot as they used to do. The only hold-ups when, as seldom, one of her subjects confessed to a fondness for Virginia Woolf or Dickens, both of which provoked a lively and lengthy discussion. There were many who hoped for a similar meeting of minds by saying they were reading Harry Potter, but to this the Queen, who had no time for fantasy, invariably said briskly, "Yes, one is saving that for a rainy day," and passed swiftly on. Seeing her almost daily meant that Sir Kevin was able to nag the Queen about what was now almost an obsession and to devise different approaches. "I was wondering, ma'am, if we could somehow factor in your reading." Once she would have let this pass, but one effect of reading had been to diminish the Queen's tolerance for jargon, which had always been low. Factor it in? What does that mean? I'm just kicking the tires on this one, ma'am, but it would help if we were able to put out a press release saying that apart from English literature, Your Majesty was also reading ethnic classics. Which ethnic classics did you have in mind, Sir Kevin? The Kama Sutra? Sir Kevin sighed. I am reading 𝑉𝒂𝒂 at the moment. Would he count? Though the private secretary had never heard of him, he thought he sounded right. Salman Rushdie? Probably not, ma'am. I don't see, said the Queen, why there is any need for a press release at all. Why should the public care what am I reading? The Queen reads. That is all they need to know. So what? I imagine the general response. To read is to withdraw, to make oneself unavailable. One would feel easier about it, said Sir Kevin, if the pursuit itself were less selfish. Selfish? Perhaps I should say solipsistic. Perhaps you should. So Kevin plunged on. Were we able to harness your reading to some larger purpose, the literacy of the nation as a whole, for instance, the improvement of reading standards among the young? One reads for pleasure, said the Queen. It is not a public duty. Perhaps, said Sir Kevin, it should be. Bloody cheek, said the Duke when she told him that night.
L'umorismo inglese accende il sorriso, non suscita esattamente quella risata esplosiva, come si dice, di pancia. E questo tratto caratteristico lo si ritrova in praticamente tutte le opere di Alan Bennett. Chi ci ha seguiti nella precedente stagione avrà seguito le letture, nonché la presentazione di Talking Heads, una raccolta che vi invito a scoprire sia sfogliando il libro anche in lingua italiana, sia andando a cercare sul podcast o sul canale YouTube gli episodi della prima stagione di Lingue Originali. Grazie a Marco Piovaz. Vi ricordo gli altri 2 appuntamenti della settimana: quello con Nadia Meroni per quanto riguarda la lingua tedesca il sabato, e con Barbara Marchand, lingua e letteratura francese, ma sempre con un'ampia presentazione in italiano, la domenica sera. L'ora è sempre quella, le ore 22. Dario Albertini, il facilitatore dei vostri ascolti in lingua originale, se non altro nelle puntate dedicate alla letteratura inglese e tedesca, vi ringrazio per l'ascolto e vi dà appuntamento alla prossima puntata di Lingue Originali su Caffè Italia.
Lingue Originali.